Hey, kia ora whanau, how's it going? Welcome back to our program here. We're in this section of the course and it's called No Whea Koe or Ko Wai Koe, who are you or where you're from. And so this is just a little intro in who I am, what I'm about and so forth. And it's nice to know who we're talking to when you're participating in the course. I live here, for those of you who are overseas who are taking on this course, I live here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, in the North Island, and north of the North Island, we're about 3 hours north of Auckland in a area called Te Tai Tokarau and Kaikohe. So that's Northland, 3 hours north of Auckland and an hour north of Whangarei. We're in a rural township and community, and I'm the founder of Kaitaki Marakai Backyard Gardens. It's a project that we started about 3 years ago here, looking at ways of creating food security solutions for our local whānau. And that was on the back of some research that I've already talked about in other spaces here, where the two main shopping markets up here, through green produce and fruits and vegetables, about $20 million worth of produce exit in regards to money leaves our economy, leaves our local economy. And what we're trying to do is get a percentage of that staying in our homes, and hence the Kaitaki Marakai Backyard Garden. A little bit about myself. Ko tāwhiri rangi te maunga, ko mohaka te awa, ko te kahu o te rangi te tupuna whare, ko Ngāti Kaungu te iwi. My mountain is Tāwhiri Rangi, my river is Mohaka, and my ancestral house is Te Kahu o Te Rangi. We live in a place where historically, if we look around parts of our whakapapa, has been historically known for growing vegetables and fruit and supplying Northland, and particularly upper north of Auckland, food supplies and vegetables and crops and so forth. Probably now 60, 70 years ago, it wasn't uncommon to see big gardens around the local community that we have up here, and whānau running those, hapu and iwi, and those are sub-tribes or tribal groups of the indigenous peoples of Aotearoa, New Zealand. We call them Māori, but up here it's Ngāpui, Ngāti Manu, and a few other hapu and so forth around the place. My connection to gardening and my involvement in gardening probably started when I was a young child growing up in South Auckland. And to be honest, the process was, for me, was more of a punishment than any excitement that I have now. I recall a number of times on Civil Street in South Auckland, there in East Tamaki Otara, where if I was wrong or did something wrong, I'd be told to go out and dig the garden. They'd give me a spade or a fork. Now, we weren't actually really digging a garden. In fact, I don't even remember us growing anything in there other than me just digging this mud patch when I was naughty. And so that was really my introduction to gardening, was just doing a lot of digging. It's probably why it leads to why I don't do much digging nowadays. I apply the no-till method to gardening. Anyway, that's another story that we'll pick up later on. But over the years, I have tried putting down gardens. A little bit longer, about 10 years later, I was married and we had 2 young boys, and we're still living in South Auckland, and I tried growing tomatoes in our backyard. And so we had this massive backyard, as you did in those days in South Auckland, before the housing boom and developers come in and subdivided places. But we had this nice big section where I could grow it. Right in the middle of it, I had my tomatoes growing, and my 2 lovely boys at the time were probably about 3, maybe 4, 3, around that young age, toddlers, not really at school yet, but just trying to help their dad out. So one day I came back from doing some mahi, and I have found all these tomatoes, green tomatoes sitting on the ground. I've since know that you can actually use those, but at the time it was just my precious tomatoes had been picked by my boys. And where we have lived, whether it's in South Auckland, down in Waiouru, or in Palmerston North, particularly for the last 10 to 15 years, I tried in some form or rather have a garden in what we're doing. This later experience was difficult because I served in the military as a chaplain for 15 years and still serving in a reserve capacity. So with deployments and training and activities, we really didn't have the opportunity to get out and spend time in the garden like I do now. So the wish or the intent was to have one, but it wasn't very successful. And in fact, I think the only thing that we actually really grew well is when did we get those? So I think it was in Awatere Street in South Auckland. My wife's grandmother gave us some rhubarb, and we had taken rhubarb wherever we went. Even growing it in Waiouru, we still had rhubarb growing there. I think they were in the pots at the time. But we took this rhubarb, this family heirloom, with us wherever we went, and planted it, and we left some there and brought it back when we moved back up north. And so for me, I've had a kind of a love-hate relationship with gardening. In one sense, in my childhood, I'm not traumatic about it, but some would think it's trauma that you get told to school holidays, go out and dig the garden, and all you're doing is just digging this big green patch. And we didn't really do anything with it as a form of punishment. And then you try little things and it doesn't work, and you watch and so forth. Training, work, and other commitments kind of creep in just to restrict the time and the opportunities that you have for doing gardening. One of the cool things I did enjoy about my military time, particularly on the deployments, I was fascinated how people took care of themselves around their own food securities and sustainability practices. Solomon Islands, I had a period of time over there, and so you're in a tropical place, and so fruit, particularly the tropic type of fruit, grew really well. In Afghanistan, we were in Bamiyan province, where pretty much you had only two seasons. You had winter and summer, and those are 6 months long. And I was fortunate enough to get deployed in a summer rotation. And when we rolled into Bamiyan and then did a recce around the local areas down to the bazaar, one of the things I was fascinated was the local farmer who grew potatoes and stored those over winter or traded them over in Pakistan or in India for as trade. And so their growing and horticultural practices, despite the intent and despite US aid or MFAT and what we did in relationship to giving assistance, here were men and women and families and households surviving off what they produced off the land, and in this case potato crops. So it's kind of that background that I bring to my garden experience now, where post the COVID-19 experience, where the shopping markets were massive lines out the front, and people were dependent on food supply chains, logistics, and movement of food around the place. And it made me start thinking, particularly with coming up here in Northland and ministering in this community, and saying, okay, what solutions can we bring to bear in a situation where we have to go through that again, particularly around our food supply? Can we mitigate that with some intentional thinking about how we utilise our backyards, and or our papakainga. Papakainga for our whānau that are overseas are tribal lands. Often they've got homes around it, and people are. It's like a village, but on tribal land. And so this thinking through what can we do to encourage and close the loop in relationship to that food supply around food, vegetables, and fruit. And so that's what we're about. That's who I am. We've been doing this now for 3 years, and as I mentioned, we are enjoying the process of growing our food and encouraging others to do the same thing. Nō reira, tēnā koutou. Ko re wai te kahu tēnei, ngā mihi atu kia koutou e tēnei wā. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. This is Rewai here. Great to have you on the course, and I hope you enjoy it and find it fascinating, and maybe we have some laughs together as we learn and grow over this time. Greetings.